Number 5. Smurfs: The Lost Village. When it comes to this reboot, it gave audiences some good news and some bad news. The bad news is that it's still not a good film. The problem with this movie is that it plays a little too safe and sticks with the generically harmless tropes that you'd normally find in any other kids flick. As a result, the film ends up with a cast of one-dimensional characters, childish humor, and a simple story that feels more like an episode of the Hanna-Barbera series stretched out to 90 minutes. Good news, however, is that not only is this an improvement from the live-action animation hybrids, but it's also the best Sony animation film in a long time. To its credit, it does deliver some nice animation that stays true to the original Peyo style, and the way that the Forbidden Forest is crafted is like a vibrantly colorful environment with many different creative plants and creatures. Overall, it's only a slight upgrade from the previous films. Sure, they're no longer unbearable pieces of garbage that only wants to be cool, but now it's just a forgettably generic animated movie that panders more to kids. Number 4. The Boss Baby. What if you take Alec Baldwin and have him play Alec Baldwin, but in a baby's body? Sounds stupid, right? Well, apparently DreamWorks thinks that this is enough of a concept to make an entire animated feature out of. The biggest problem with The Boss Baby is that the writing is terrible. It's almost like there's a complete lack of effort that's been put into the script, which is why it ended up with such a predictably lazy plot, forgettable characters, and humor that mostly consists of lowbrow baby jokes and dumb pop culture references. Number 3. The Star. I'll give Sony this, at least they didn't turn the nativity story into an over-the-top cartoony mess that would focus more on bad, fast-paced slapstick than on Jesus. What the movie did, however, is still pretty bad. The Star is actually less of an adaptation of one of the most important Christmas stories, and more one of the most generic animated features in recent years. While the whole nativity aspect feels more like a theme than the actual main focus, the true story is about the talking animals that are trying to save this nice couple that are having a baby from an evil hunter and his 2 mean dogs. If that isn't bad enough, it makes it worse by filling the feature with pointless side plots and terrible humor that feels more like the film is undermining the message of the nativity story. It's almost like it's saying, "Who cares about the coming of the Messiah? Let's watch these funny camels!" Number 2. The Nut Job 2: Nutty by Nature. It was a tough choice to know where to place this film and The Star, since not only are they equally as bad, but they also share similar pros and cons. Honestly, I almost considered doing a tie for number 2. So why did I end up putting The Nut Job 2 worse than The Star? Well, for the latter, I'll give it that it does have an audience. It's a very niche audience, but there is a small group of people that would want to see it. Who the fridge asked for a sequel to The Nut Job? The first film was awful and had its legacy thrown down the bargain bin. Who thought it was a good idea to give Surly and the Gang an encore? But since they did return in theaters, what did they give audiences? A story about talking animals trying to save their home from evil industrialism. You cannot get any blander than that. In fact, the two words to describe this film are dull and bland. The predictable story, the pointlessly huge list of characters, the stale humor, everything about it ends up being dull and bland. Even if it does improve its tone and contains okay animation, it's far from enough to even make this film passable. I understand that we live in an age where studios care more about making franchises than standalone movies, but this is a great example as to why not all movies need a sequel. And the #1 worst animated film of 2017, The Emoji Movie. Come on, I think we all know coming in what would be the worst one of 2017. This movie is so universally hated ever since the world first heard of the concept that Sony was making a movie about emojis that it's no longer an opinion that The Emoji Movie is bad. It's a fact. And when the movie was released, it turned out to be far worse than anyone could ever imagine. This would have to be some of the worst writing used in an animated feature. A story that blatantly rips off films like Wreck-It Ralph and Inside Out with no originality. Highly mean-spirited tone, terrible humor, a message that, coming from this movie, feels hypocritical, soulless advertising placed everywhere like Candy Crush, Just Dance, Spotify, and more, an utterly despicable need to be cool with the young crowd, a cast of such hateable characters. And to top it all off, animation that is conceptually so bad that no professional studio would ever allow it on the big screen. It embodies every creative problem with Sony Pictures Animation and presents them all in this one disastrous feature. In fact, 2017 in general is the prime example of everything wrong with Sony Animation for both in the creative and business side. No matter how much small profits they've made, they killed what little reputation they had left. It's already taking effect on their future projects and no sustainable franchises to keep them afloat once Hotel Transylvania is over. It's sad, but there are now more points than not that show that Sony Pictures and the well-being of the artists there are better off if Sony Animation would close down. In its current state, it's a worthless brand and a worthless company that will be forever known to make one of the worst animated features of all time. But more specifically, the worst animated film of 2017.